here. Thank you all so much for joining. We're so excited to have you and excited to introduce Chalet Pet Partner Katie Pape, who's the owner and founder of Windy City Paws. Katie is a fear-free certified professional pet sitter and founded Windy City Paws in 2009. It's a dog walking and pet sitting company in Chicago. They offer dog walks, dog runs, 2-hour pet sits, cat visits, and just rolled out training walks. I'm going to let Katie take it from here, but following the presentation, we will do a Q&A. So please submit all of your questions below in the Q&A box or the chat box. Just type them and we will get to them at the end. But yeah, Katie, I will let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction, Carly. It's my pleasure to be here with you guys today. I'm really excited to talk to you about the benefits of this fear-free approach to pet care and how we can alleviate fear, anxiety, and stress in our pets. So I'm really happy that Chalet's had me here. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I'm a little nervous, so hopefully this goes well. Bear with me, guys. Let's start with kind of introducing myself. My name's Katie. I started Windy City Paws when it was in 2009. I was the first person doing walks for my company. After about 6 months, I hired my first dog walker. I was actually using my closet as an office, believe it or not. So again, after 6 months, hired my first walker. And to give you an idea of how big we were before COVID, I was at about 80 employees. So we were pretty big. We serviced the majority of Chicagoland. And typically we really service clients who had recurring regular schedules for clients that were really going to the office place. And then of course, we also did some cat vacation care. What we saw with a lot of the dogs that we were caring for on a regular basis, we saw a variety of breeds, sizes, ages, and temperaments. We saw well-adjusted dogs, new to the city dogs, puppies, and rescue dogs. The most common rescue dog behavior that we saw was some fear and anxiety, primarily towards men. And I think our assessment there was that perhaps they were abused by a male in the past. We did see also some resource guarding, which is when dogs are exhibiting behaviors like growling, biting, or lunging over food or toys, kind of possessive behavior or things that they care about. Some home protection and some leash reactivity. But basically our solution to handle the majority of those issues was to train the individual walkers who would be matched with those dogs. And in about 1 to 2 weeks after our training with the dogs, they would really be able to gain that animal's trust primarily. And that's because they were there on a repeated, regular basis. So we used some basic training techniques that were primarily positive reinforcement based to kind of break through that fear and anxiety that we saw some of those dogs have. Over the years, though, more and more dogs have become rescued, which is great. You know, Chicago has put in some laws that have made it harder for puppy stores and puppy mills to really be selling their dogs to Chicagoans, which is awesome. But that means we're seeing a lot more behavioral challenges because of some varied past traumas that these dogs have endured. So we really, as a company, started adapting through this with not only just positive reinforcement, but really continuing education and looking for companies to give us that insight, which really brings me to the next slide of fear-free. This fear-free is a huge resource that I discovered in 2017 when I actually met Dr. Marty Becker, who founded Fear-Free. And I was immediately interested because the goals, principles, and practices of his new company, was to essentially promote and protect the emotional well-being of animals, which of course resonated with us. So in 2017, when he offered his first course for Fear-Free, I took it. I jumped at that opportunity, and it was actually a veterinary tech course. So while some of the principles were still helpful and useful, like gradual touch, kind of increased positive reinforcement techniques, and overall thinking about the animal's senses when evaluating how to keep them most calm, it really helped us primarily prepare for emergencies and know what to expect if the dogs or cats that we were caring for did end up at the vet or an emergency visit for whatever reason. I told Fear-Free at the time that while the course was amazing, I was anxious and ready for kind of a professional course for people that are in the pet care industry that could also use more robust information on how to handle the type of behavioral challenges that we were seeing in the field. So it finally in May of 2021, so just a couple months ago, Fear Free did come out with a pet professionals course. I took that, so has my Windy City Paws office staff, and we use those principles as main guiders how we train our employees who are out in the field walking the dogs that we care for. All right, now that you guys understand a little bit more about Fear Free, let's go back to a little bit how things have been changing in this pet care industry. Okay, so shocker, COVID's changed a lot. We obviously saw with COVID a lot of people working from home. Many people during that time suspended services with us. They thought they would do the walks themselves, potty breaks, and they were really worried about course exposure. So there are multiple reasons why they wanted to limit people coming in and out of their home. But a couple of things happened that we saw. So more clients working from home ultimately meant when they want to go back to work or they decided to bring us back in, we've seen a lot of separation anxiety. So some dogs aren't wanting to leave their owner. They're not wanting to go as far from home on walks when the owner is at home. And then we're seeing kind of, not always, but in some instances, a lot of kind of pent up energy, a lack of physical exercise. So maybe the owners were doing their best, but if they were really working to the same extent they were before COVID and now they're just working from home, we're not sure that they were getting 30-minute walks or 60-minute walks, things like that. So we're seeing some regression, some poor leash etiquette, where the dogs are biting the leash again. They're not used to kind of, walking on a leash proactively and in the correct way. And then, of course, we're seeing more triggers in general on these walks where, when there was a stay-at-home order, and again, people were limiting people coming in and out of their house, not only was there a lack of socialization of people and dogs perhaps coming in and out, but there were just less people out and about, which meant if you were walking your dog during that time, and we know, because of course we were, there were just fewer people out, fewer potential stressors or triggers. There were fewer bicyclists, fewer strollers, fewer people, fewer dogs, all that stuff. So now that the world is slowly returning to some sense of normalcy, we're seeing the dogs react to that. And of course, nothing is more of the apex of showing this, or more of the example, than a pandemic puppy or dog. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically dogs that were rescued during COVID. And this is a picture of me and my family. It's my daughter Cosette, my husband John, and my pandemic puppy Margot Flamingo, who is adorable in this picture. We rescued her from Felines and Canines, an amazing organization, last September. And really, at that time, we also had a senior cavalier who was the impetus behind my design for my logo. She'd been with me for 14 years. And, she really slept, she ate, she cuddled on my lap. And so we kind of quickly realized we were in over our head with this puppy that had a very different personality than we were used to. And with COVID, we really saw, wow, she had a different personality inside our home than outside of the home. And I wanted to understand that behavior more and get comfortable with it, get her comfortable with some new normals, knowing that COVID wasn't going to stay, that reality wasn't going to stay. So for me personally, having a puppy and seeing her needs and her challenges made me not only want to learn more about dog behavior and what I could do with training, but also how I could help Windy City Paws clients, Chicagoans who are going through really the same thing. So ultimately with Windy City Paws, Carly mentioned it earlier, but we came up with a new service of training walks that really was a conceptually higher level service where it's a working walk where we can really address some of these common behaviors we were seeing, but again, all with positive reinforcement. So yeah, COVID changed everything, but maybe it just sped things up, basically. So now today, I kind of really wanted to talk to you about some of my key takeaways from my Fear Free certification and my experience owning a dog walking company in Chicago for the past 12 years. And I'm obviously hoping this will be of use to you as a pet owner. I'm going to review how a rewards-based approach coupled with patience and animal behavior can have a lasting positive impact on your pet and your bond. So let's start here. What have you ever noticed things that have stressed your pet out? Here are some common stressors that we've seen, okay? A new or atypical experience like a car ride or travel, new home life or routine, Are there new people coming in and out of the home? Did you have a new baby? Is a new dog joining the family? Loud sounds like fireworks, dogs barking, car horns, airplanes, overall city sounds. And then lastly, discomfort. Maybe this typically can happen during some grooming activities, but also not having a safe space in the home, having a pain or illness, or having ill-fitting gear. These are all things that can contribute or be stressors to animals having ultimately some fear, anxiety, and stress. So let's talk about that. A stressor happens, and now here's what could happen. They experience fear, anxiety, and stress. So let's talk about that. Fear is a negative emotional and psychological response to a real or perceived threat or danger. Anxiety is a feeling of apprehension or anticipation of a threat or danger. And then stress is the mental strain or tension resulting from that threat or danger. Normally, we see these things together in some way. So you'll see throughout this presentation, I'm going to have an acronym of FAS, which stands for fear, anxiety, and stress. We kind of lump them together. And also, before I move on, it's important to note that your animal's perception of the threat or danger is the issue, whether it's real or not. It's valid to your pet in that moment, and their brain kind of goes into survival mode. So an example of this would be with my dog, Margot. She gets triggered or stressed when she sees things that could not be harmful to her, things like a plastic bag, on the sidewalk or blowing in the air. She barks at. So that gives you an idea, though, that she is creating that in her mind is just as real of a threat, perhaps, as a bicyclist or another dog coming towards her. Okay, so it's really about what they're perceiving. So let's start to look at what does that look like in our dogs? How is that represented in their actual behavior that we can see? So I think these are pretty good signs. These are coming from Fear Free itself, showing the escalation of how things can go from, in the bottom right-hand corner, green, where they're relaxed, to moderate anxiety, to, of course, severe anxiety quickly. It can go from green to red quickly. So you can take a look at this and kind of see, have you noticed any of these signs in your dog at any point? And if so, that would be a good place to start when you're thinking about the next things I'll mention, because I'm going to be really talking about how can we now reduce fear, anxiety, and stress in some of these activities and situations. So before we go further, I guess I want to also make sure that you understand, how could dogs respond to fear, anxiety, and stress? Here are some visible responses, okay? I've broken them down into kind of 4 categories. So the first is these dogs could kind of fidget or fret. They may appear on edge. They can't relax. Maybe they're pacing, panting, vigilant. Perhaps they're excitably barking or jumping. They're licking their lips. They're scratching or grooming themselves suddenly and with some ferocity. Another option is they freeze. They remain still and completely unresponsive to the environment. This is a confusing one, actually. A lot of owners can think this is compliance and the dog's just sitting there doing the right thing. But actually, sometimes it can be the opposite, where the dog feels completely helpless and they are terrorized or paralyzed with fear. Another response would be flight. The dog tries to flee, run away, hide under a bed. The ears can be back and the tail can be tucked. And then lastly, they can try to fight. They might growl or snap, bare their teeth, or try to drive this perceived threat away. Leash reactivity can also come into play here when the animal can't flee because they're tethered to you on a leash. So when a dog doesn't have the ability to flee because they're tethered to you, they might feel they have to show they can fight. Whether or not they will, they're going to show they can to that perceived threat. It's very common for dogs to display multiple signs of this at the same time, especially when their reactions aren't really heard by their owners. Another good thing to note here is we really never want to punish any warning signs that your dog could have, because this is your dog trying to kind of talk to you, and peaceful resolution still is possible at this point. They have not turned to aggression. These are still kind of warning signs. Let's talk now a little bit further about some of the things, the symptoms and side effects of fear, anxiety, and stress that can happen to your pet. The first bullet point are things that are tough to see. So this is important to bring home. Even though you're not seeing it, your dog likely has elevated heart rate, blood pressure, sugar glucose level, and temperature. Things that you can see: loss of appetite, excessive salivation, heavy breathing, vomiting, diarrhea, and just a lack of a higher level rational thinking. Your dog is in a survival fight or flight mode, and so therefore they're only able to think through very simple set of things when they're in this mode. So obviously we can imagine, right? We love our dogs. We don't want them to have an elevated heart rate. We don't want them to have a loss of appetite or be vomiting, anything like that. We don't want them to be fretting or fidgeting or freezing, right? So, we know that we don't want this, but, what's the real impact of fear, anxiety, and stress on our pet? If these stressors are constant and the reactions and symptoms are ongoing, well, it's pretty bleak. We could have, our dogs could have chronic stress, which is a long-term health condition that can be really devastating to your pet's emotional and physical health. And then, of course, there's going to be very likely more intense behavior of reactivity and aggression, which can really not only deteriorate the human-animal bond, but make your needed activities challenging. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you today about what to do with this. How can we avoid this? Okay, there are things you can do. This is the good news. And again, I've broken them down to four things. So the first thing we want to do is understand body language of our pets. We want to be able to tell rather, if our dog is showing signs of fear, anxiety, or stress. We also want to create consistent, regular routines for our dog to ensure all their mental and physical needs are being met. We also want to increase the comfort in our home and in activities for our dog. We want to reconceptualize everyday tasks and kind of break them down into bite-sized chunks so our pet can be comfortable with them. And then lastly, we want to choose the right pet care providers to really reinforce the work that we're doing at home. All right, let's start looking at these in more detail. So the big one, I think, to start is understanding your dog's body language. An animal body language takes time and effort to understand. I'm just today going to touch upon a few big concepts. In general, though, you first need to understand that your pet's body language is how they're talking to us. An animal's body language can show us if they're enjoying an interaction or not. We don't want to assume, but rather we want to continue to ask our pet how they feel about an interaction by really watching their body language and responding quickly and compassionately to reduce those stressors as needed, okay? So I've broken this down to a couple of things here that we need to focus on when we're looking at body language. So one is we want to have a considerate approach, and this is a core fear-free concept that considers the experience from the pet's point of view and makes adjustments to ensure we're approaching the dog in the calmest, least confrontational way possible. We're going to be thinking about surfaces, making sure the dogs can't slip. We're going to be thinking about cleaning products and what their senses are. And we're going to be thinking about using food and treats as motivators, as a reward. This is, again, where patience is key, understanding behavior, because you're going to need to break down an activity and give positive rewards to mark that positive activity little by little until you can string together all the actions. Gentle control means we're using our hands minimally to force an action or behavior from our dog. We're using positive distractions and pleasurable rewards to encourage a calmer, more enjoyable experience with our dog. So we're using treats, Kongs, and again, looking at that complete environment to make sure it's as comfortable as we can have for our dogs. I mentioned non-slip mats. That's one of the first things we're considering when we're thinking about our senses. We want to make sure that our animals have a surface that they can't slip from so that they're comfortable. We also want to be aware of smells. Dogs can have strong reactions to bleach chemical smells or perfumes, things like that, scented lotions. We want to think about pheromones or essential oils in a diffuser, perhaps, maybe even classical music, something like that to be soothing. Okay. Besides setting the environment, which is a big deal, we'll talk more about that in a bit. When we're looking at animal behavior, I'm going to start giving you a couple examples of how we're kind of really using considerate approach, patience, and gentle control together, okay? So let's use an example of physically brushing your dog, and let's say for argument's sake that your dog does have some fear, anxiety, or stress around maybe being brushed on their hind legs, okay? So in that example, I know my dog has this fear, anxiety, or stress over hind legs being brushed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by bringing my dog to an area that I feel is safe and secure, okay, for the dog. Again, thinking about the smells and what's the sounds and making sure that the surface is right. Once I have that, I'm going to ask my dog to do something easy that I know my dog can do, okay? I'm going to have her sit. I'm going to give her treats and positive reward. Good girl, Margot, etc. And then I'm going to start by brushing her where she's comfortable. My dog's really comfortable everywhere but her hind legs. So I'm going to start holding my brush maybe on her shoulders, and I'm going to have that kind of continual touch throughout until I get to her hind legs, okay? Once I know we're getting close to her hind legs, I stay away for a bit. I want her to have a couple minutes where I'm really just running the brush from her shoulders down her back, okay? She should be enjoying that motion. That's something she doesn't have fear, anxiety, or stress with. I'm giving her treats. And again, that positive, good girl, those types of positive verbal rewards. Then when I need to get to the leg, I'm going to start softer. Perhaps if I feel like the brush is too triggering, maybe I take the brush off for a minute and now I'm just using my hand. So she gets used to my hand. Again, as long as she's not moving and she's staying in that same space, I'm going to continue to give her those positive rewards, good girl, and give her those treats. If she moves at any point, we're going to start this process all over again. So this is where that patience really comes into play, right? We're again trying to break down something as complex as brushing our dog on their entire body, including 4 areas where they're sensitive. We're really breaking that down to make sure that we're getting the dog's body language that's showing, hey, I'm comfortable here. Maybe I'm not loving this, but I'm not walking away. I'm not giving you body language that this is upsetting to me, okay? A more heightened example of this, because I know brushing is something that dogs primarily don't have a huge sensitivity to, but you can imagine this example with, let's say, nail trimmers, right? Let's say you've got to trim your dog's nails. A similar concept could be used, but again, just to show you how far you might need to break down this concept, perhaps where you're starting is you're just putting the nail clippers next to your dog where they're sitting. And you're giving them treats, you're having them sit, you're having them stay, you're having them come, you're having them do different things that are easy for them to do, whatever that is. If it's fetch, okay, but they're doing that with the clippers around. The next step could be if your dog's okay with that and accepting of that, and you're seeing that body language that's saying that your dog's okay. Now maybe you're going to try taking your dog's paw and just taking the clippers and just touching the paw simply, not actually doing the clipping action, but again, getting your dog used to clipper close to me or even touching my paw is good because my owner's saying, good girl, my owner's giving me treats. I'm liking that attention, okay? And ultimately, only when the dog continues to show you through their body language that they're okay with it, ultimately, then you would, of course, clip the nails. But maybe, again, just to give you an idea of how much patience might need to be used, maybe you're cutting one nail at a time and you're coming back. You're not doing anything like pinning your dog down or anything like that to kind of force that interaction, okay? We'll talk more about that later, but these are just some examples of how you can utilize these 3 concepts together in doing a needed activity. Now, because we're on body language, I do want to pivot for a bit and just talk about a couple common misnomers before we move on. So sometimes when a dog freezes, okay, that is a physical response that they're having to a stressor. Sometimes owners and maybe groomers in this instance could unintentionally view that as complacency. They think, oh, the dog's doing what they should be doing. They're staying exactly calm and still for me to do my work. But it's important to still look for that body language. Something that could be happening, that the ears could be still tucked. Maybe it's hard to see if they're wet, but also maybe they're showing a whale eye or something like that. A whale eye is where your dog's eye goes like this kind of, and you can see a lot of the whites of the eye more than normal. Sometimes it's minor indicators like that your dog is actually paralyzed in fear. Okay, so kind of a misnomer of looking for that freezing action. When you think it's kind of too good to be true, your dog's being complacent, maybe it is. Okay. Another thing to think about is when you're outside, not dealing with your own dog, but dealing with other dogs out and about, I've had people come to me and say, hey, this dog was wagging their tail and I went to go up to them and then they growled at me or they showed my teeth. And the first thing I'll say is, well, how exactly was that tail wag? Was it high? Was it low? And what else was happening in the environment? Did a bicyclist go by in the minute that you started, getting closer to that dog? There's a lot to consider there. It's not just your intention, the dog's intention. A common misnomer, I think, is a wagging tail on a dog means that they're friendly or they want to have a positive interaction. And really, a wagging tail just signals a desire to interact. Okay, so that's not enough necessarily to feel super good about that interaction. Let's take it one step further, because I know interacting with strange dogs is such a big issue in our industry, and I want to support that education. So let's take that step one further. Okay, there's a dog outside that you haven't met, and you do want to approach the dog for whatever reason. Okay, really the way to do that is different than what you might think. I come across many people who want to work for me and clients who think that what you should do is stay where you are, bend down and show the dog your hand. Let the dog smell your hand. And then if they sniff it and don't act aggressively, then you can pet the dog primarily on the head. Well, guess what? That's actually not the right way to approach a dog according to the fear-free methodology. So the correct way, according to that, would be to always let a dog approach you first. Okay. You want to ideally have a treat on you. Dogs are primarily treat motivated. So you want to, if you have that treat, you want to actually throw it or toss it away from you. You don't want to have to stress that dog out by coming to you for that treat, but you want to let them know, hey, I've got some good stuff here. I've got some treats and I'd love to interact with you if you would like that. So you offer a treat by rolling or tossing it to them. And then you kneel down to the side of the dog. You never want to be over looming, standing overhead of the dog. You always want to avoid eye contact, which I know is a hard one, especially if it's a super cute dog. And only then, after you've done all these things, if the dog is giving you body language indicators that it wants to interact with you and wants to be pet, then and only then are you starting to pet, maybe under the chin, on the chest, or on the shoulders. Again, most people think that the human makes that first proactive move of putting your hands out, but not at all. Fear-free says, let that dog come to you. Okay, so I know that's a lot. So after we understand some body language, at least initially, what next can you do? Well, creating routines are super important for us, our kids, and yes, our dogs. This is especially big right now. Perfect timing, right? People are thinking about going back to their workplace. Schools are opening back up. So if you're changing a routine, your kids are going back to school and you're going back to work, this is especially important because remember, new experiences and new routines are stressful on your dog. Okay. So we want to set a routine that's predictable, consistent, regular, one that includes potty breaks. And that's different from physical exercise. The physical exercise can be outdoors or indoors. You can do fetch inside or outside. You can even use things like a flirt pole, which is basically a stick with a string and a toy attached to it. So you can kind of lure your dog around, basically. You also need to think about mental stimulation. And this was a big one for me that I admit I did not realize. And this just shows how different dogs can be. My Cavalier really never showed an interest in puzzles and certain toys, but Margot, I don't know if she's a puppy, she's had a lack of that. She's got some poodle in her, but she loves these puzzles. I've gone through, I think, 3 of them already. She goes through them in minutes, but those are great for mental stimulation. Then, of course, regular socialization. This is with people and other dogs. If your dogs have issue with fear, anxiety, or stress, though, I would really caution strongly against dog parks until that's more under control. A lot of things can happen in a dog park that, again, you don't have control over. So that would just be one misnomer to think about there. And then lastly, kind of ensuring you're on a consistent feeding and sleep schedule. Okay. Let's move on to the next thing you can do, which is really increase comfort in your home and in activities that you need to do. So first things first, we want to make sure you always have a spot in your home that's a safe space away from stimuli. This could be a playpen, it could be a crate or bed area, but anywhere that's away from kind of the home hustle and bustle. And if you have children, this is typically a space away from them. I hate to say it, but if you've got kids, you know what I mean. Maybe it's even a baby gate, something like that, to kind of block off that safe space. It's important to think about this before your dog could be displaying signs of fear, anxiety, and stress, so you know what to do. So if a friend comes over and your dog is showing you body signs that they're agitated by this, you can put your dog in this safe space, okay? This is also an area where you could use pheromones here. You could have essential oils in a diffuser. Be playing soothing classical music in this space. If you are ever leaving your dog in this space when you're going to work or you're going to go run an errand, thinking about things like, should the lights be on or off? Little things like that to make everything as comfortable for your dog as you possibly can. Then with activities, again, we're always trying to have the dog's comfort in mind. And this is where, again, considerate approach comes into play. This is really a core fear-free concept that, again, is considering the experience from the pet's point of view and making adjustments to ensure we're approaching the dog in the calmest, least confrontational way possible. So again, thinking of those dog senses, the cleaning products, is it cold or hot? What music could I have? Should I be using pheromones? We're thinking about those surfaces, making sure they're steady, there's no cause for them to slip. And we're using food or treat as motivators to reward. Then we're considering gradual touch. So again, if I need to give my dog eardrops and she's showing signs of fear, anxiety, or stress when I touch her ears, I'm not going to start by touching her there. I'm going to start by touching her back, which she loves, and getting her into a calmer state and giving her that positive reward. Again, I'm not going to lift my hand, but rather continually pet from the shoulders or the back to the ears, and then keep giving her treats for allowing me to even just touch them. I'm first going to start by just touch. I'm not even going to bring out that drops, because I'm going to guess that's going to be triggering to her. So again, this gradual touch is really the reminder to start touching your dog where they are comfortable, and then moving slowly and continuously to where they're not. Then gentle control. This is really big. With gentle control, less is more. Hands are mostly there for stability, safety, and guidance. So an important part of this entire approach is strategically setting up the animal space, like we've discussed, to encourage voluntary movement into given places for position and care. So again, we're using these positive distractions, pleasurable rewards to encourage this calmer, more enjoyable experience, okay? So in the example of giving eardrops to my dog, this is where I would know I'm not using gentle control if I'm seeing myself pinning down my dog, or I see myself gripping her, holding her here and inserting drops into her ear and kind of saying, we got to do this, Margot. That's the opposite of gentle control. Of course, there are situations where in extreme cases, you might need to use towels or muzzle your dog if really, again, there's something extreme. But gentle control is saying that if your dog is coming out of voluntary positions and showing you that behavior, that they're uncomfortable, again, that means you need to break down that movement, that action, that activity into smaller bite-sized things that the dog can excel at and be calm and comfortable in. Okay, so in this example of a nail trim, okay, again, you're not going to be trimming those nails. Maybe your dog gets, one paw trimmed one day, the next paw trimmed the next day. You're kind of going bite-sized pieces, okay? And then lastly, it's really important to keep your regular vet appointments. This is a reminder here to keep these, because if there's an undiagnosed health condition, your dog will be easier or quicker to stress or trigger, and the reactions may be pain-based. Also, be open to medications, whether they're prescribed or not, if your vet suggests it. A vet may suggest natural CBD products or also prescriptions like Prozac that can help. My puppy Margot, that cute little ball of fur, the day my vet met her, and I love my vet, and she's from a fear-free certified practice, she kindly and in an educated way told me that her recommendation was for Margot to be on a regular dose of Prozac to really bring her base level down to a way that was more manageable for us to kind of break these activities down and create that bond. And I like to give this example because when my dog was given Prozac, I talked to people about it. And I heard from a lot of people outside of the industry, I heard a lot of judgment. And that was a little surprising to me, because I doubt they would have judged a friend who needed antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds. And I think the thing to remember there is, yeah, even though she's a puppy, some dogs are genetically predisposed to more anxiety. So instead of judging how we can get to a place, sometimes if medicine, can be used effectively, again, if your vet suggests it, it can really help you get to that baseline quicker and just have success quicker. So I've had that experience. If anyone listening wants to talk to me more about it, I'm happy to, but there's no shame in that. What really is the ultimate goal is having your dog safe, calm, secure, and have that bond strong. Okay. Let's talk about some cool products that I think could be really useful for you. If you're starting to like what I'm talking about, you're like, what do I need to get? I've kind of broken these down into some of my top products that we use for Windy City Paws and for us with Margot. So we'll start in the top left-hand corner. You're going to see a red Kong. This is an awesome separation anxiety tool. You can put peanut butter in it, canned dog food, cheese in it. You can freeze it even. Give it to your dog after a walk or before you leave the house, perhaps. Next to that, you're going to see some puzzles. I actually got this exact puzzle for Margot, one of the three. Again, these are great mental stimulation. Instead of just giving your dogs treats, sometimes make them work for it. It's good for them and for you. Then you're going to see 3 options for adaptable pheromones. That's kind of my favorite brand for pheromones right now. And there's 3 big options. One is a spray. You can spray it on yourself. You can spray it on your dog's bed. You can spray it on a dog bandana. Another option is the collar for your dog. And then lastly, pheromones that you plug in so it kind of diffuses in the air for a certain square footage, a room typically. Then to the right of that, you're going to see kind of 2 anti-slip mats. And this is really so important to think about to make your dog feel safe and secure. I know this black one that I'm showing is one that I use with my elderly Cavalier. She was having trouble gripping where her food bowl was. So this was a huge help. The black mat can be used for feeding. It could be used for nail trims, some grooming things like that. And then also that orange mat that I'm showing is pretty great because that is an anti-slip mat for the bathtub or sink. Again, this is depending on where you're grooming your dog. If you're doing that at home, super important to think about those surfaces. Going from the bottom left-hand corner, this adorable golden retriever and his snuffle mat. Snuffle mats are great separation anxiety tools and a good mental stimulation tool as well. You can put your kibble or treats in here. And again, let your dog work to get that treat or that food. Next to that is a leash sleeve. These are awesome. They make all different kinds, but basically this can help signal others to stay away if they can. Again, we use these often with Windy City Paws. They just slide right onto any leash. Next, I have a Thunder shirt. We use this often with my Cavalier, and this can be really helpful for anxiety in specific instances like storms that can be scary for a dog. It makes them feel similar to a baby being swaddled, and it can be an alternative to medicine. And then lastly, we've shown a lick pad. There's many different kinds, but this one's super cool because it has a suction cup. So you can spread peanut butter or canned cheese or dog food on this to help reward your dog during bath time, nail trims, a bunch of things. And this is way better than, I don't know how many of you have seen this on America's Funniest Home Videos or anything, but there's a pretty funny video going on of someone who just smears peanut butter on their forehead. I don't know about you, but this is way better than putting peanut butter on my forehead to get my dog to be happy and enjoy something like nail trims. All right, so it's important, of course, that any hard work you're putting in at home with your dog is somewhat equally matched by any care providers that you might need. So let's start with a veterinarian. We need to take our pets, as you know, regularly to the vet to ensure they're healthy, there's no underlying health conditions, and they're not in pain, and also get a medical opinion on if medication's needed. Since Fear-Free has been around since 2016, there are many practices in Chicago that are Fear-Free certified. So this can mean that they have things like separate waiting rooms for dogs and cats, or pheromones are plugged in, that they probably have soft or warm blankets on top of cold, sterile medical tables when they're examining their dogs, things like that. With a groomer, this is another big one because, as I mentioned a couple of times, this kind of freezing, this body language of the animals freezing in fear during some type of grooming practices can be common. Now you might already know, does your dog like the groomer? Are they excited and running towards the door? Or are they pulling away from the groomer? If it's the latter, there's likely some fear, anxiety, or stress with that activity. And I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things that you could do to maybe make that better for your dog. Okay, so you could do things like talk to them about if crate time, if they're crating the dogs after grooming. I don't know if they're like my groomer. Now I have something set up with her where she texts me, and within 10 minutes, if I'm there, she will not crate my dog. So I have kind of a 10-minute window where I can go and try to take that one step out of the equation that I know is triggering to my personal dog. I know sometimes the blow dryers are triggering. Again, you can talk about to your groomer, hey, can you do everything except for the blow dry? Or can I come when you're blow drying, and can I give treats and positive rewards? Can I give you a lick mat that has a suction cup on it for you to use? Things like that. You can really get engaged in these interactions so you know more what your dog's going through. And perhaps maybe you can be a part of that literally. There are also some fear-free certified groomers as well. We'll get into that in a little bit. Then dog walker. You want to look for a company with employees who train their walkers with positive reinforcement only. And if your dog walker is not trained with fear-free principles, you can assist them by going on a walk with them, showing them and talking about how you want them to handle when your dog has triggers and is stressed with things outside on a walk. You want to talk to them about using treats and redirecting your dog's attention. Or, of course, you just hire us, Windy City Paws, if you're watching this and you're in Chicago, because we have availability and we would love to help. Then pet sitting or boarding facility. This is another big one for anyone that's traveling without their pet. If that's you, you need a reliable pet sitter or boarding facility. So in that case, keep in mind, if you can get your dog used to either the pet sitter or the facility before actually needing to go on a vacation, that's a good idea. Because remember, new experiences can be stressful. There's also things you might be able to request that pet sitter or boarding facility do to make your pet stay more comfortable. Again, music, pheromones, special treats, or puzzles. We want your dog to have a positive association here. And then lastly, with a trainer, most reputable trainers only use positive reinforcement, but it's smart to confirm and make it known that you would not want any punishment, verbal or physical, if your dog does something that needs correcting. We're trying to reward the dogs for giving us warning signs and, again, talking to us. Patience is key here. So shock collars, hitting, etc., can really cause emotional, lasting damage. I hope that today I've started to show you how a rewards-based approach plus patience and knowledge will help you and your pet strengthen your bond, because calmer, happier, less stressed animals are easier, safer, and more enjoyable to interact with and care for. They're more likely to calmly cooperate in activities that you need done, and it also fosters a deeper trust and emotional bond with your pet. That's Margot Flamingo when she was a little bitty baby. And this is her now, all salt and peppery. Here are some good resources for you. So the first one, Windy City Paws, that is me. We are accepting new clients and we have availability for our training walks. Our training walks are really perfect for dogs that are having difficulty adjusting to city life or who just need a little extra help. We craft a customized training plan for the dog focused on 8 training tenets, and then our walkers implement that plan while keeping you fully up to date along the way. So we're here for you. If you need us, please reach out. And then fear-free, of course, you might want to consider becoming certified as a pet owner. There's a ton of great information for you. So I highly, highly recommend that. And then lastly, there's a fear-free directory. So this is where you could put in your zip code, find out what veterinarians, what groomers, what dog walking companies, who near me actually already knows about these fear-free principles and has taken the course. So I hope those resources are helpful for you. And I think now we will go to Q&A. So I will give me a moment here to get my stop share here, and we will jump into questions as soon as I can look them up. All right. Let's see. So one question is, do I recommend any specific classical music? No, just classical in general, something that's probably not going high and low, something that kind of rhythmically and from a sound perspective is a little bit more soothing. Yeah, but no, I think any classical music is probably fine. My fear-free vet. Good one. Yeah. I will tell you that one. They're on diversity animal care. I'll put that. I can put all their contact information maybe in the chat for you guys, or I can circle back with Carly. They're amazing. Blum is also, I know, fear-free certified. They're great. We recommend them all the time. I'm going to read this other one. Our dog is a pandemic dog, not puppy. Okay. She's 4 years old, 60 pounds. She's fine with people outside, but won't let people in the house. Loud, consistent barking, growling. Her tone is aggressive. She's bit your husband. Lots of improvement since the bite, but can't rule it out as a possibility. Yeah, this is huge. So we definitely have seen this with our dog. Our dog's does the same thing. So a couple things. You might want to think about gates. Okay. So if your dog's not okay with people coming in, you could think about gating the dog so that they're really not ever able to interact with the person when they come in, but they're still able to kind of see this person interact with you. So I have a gate so that if someone comes into my front door, I can be in my living room, being with this person, and my dog is safe in a safe space, kind of in the kitchen with a gate. I could also remove her completely from that situation by putting her in one of those safe spaces that we talked about in the home. Sometimes it's a crate, sometimes it's a different room with a bed. It seems like with this, and this question is from Tina, I'd have to dig in a lot more. There's definitely work that needs to happen here, but you would want to really understand when people are coming into the house, how can you break down that activity and reward your dog for being quiet and being calm when someone is coming into your home? That would be the goal. And you might start with 5 minutes. Can your dog tolerate being behind the gate with your husband or someone else who's treating her, saying, good girl, while another person is interacting with his friend inside? Maybe just 5 minutes is all you can do, and you're going to build on that. I can come back to that though, Tina, in more detail. A lot of questions here, guys, so sorry. I'll try to be mindful of what I can get to. Let's see. How quickly do pheromones work, and do they need to be all over the house? This really depends on the dog. They work quickly. I mean, within 20 minutes or so, we spray pheromones on our clothes when we're going into a dog that's displaying fear, anxiety, and stress. And it says 20 minutes really for that to take effect, typically. But you're normally not seeing a night and day approach there. It's really just kind of gradual. The dog's feeling a little bit more comfortable because they're smelling the pheromones. They're not smelling your scented lotion or other dogs. They're sensing those pheromones and making it easier for them to be close to you without that stress. Let's see. Is it better to use a dog hotel or to have someone staying in your home? Better to have someone staying in your home if you can do that. Although, I say that when Windy City Paws does not offer that service because it's very challenging to staff. But typically, if you can remove new experiences, your dog's in a better situation. So a new experience would be taking your dog to a new environment by essentially keeping them at home where 90% of their routine could be kept. It's just you're gone. If you can replace that presence with a person that your dog can respond to, that is better than a hotel. However, because of the nature of how challenging it can be to find that pet sitter, I really recommend both. And I know that's frustrating, but ideally you have a pet sitter you can count on and a facility you can take your dog to if they're unavailable or an emergency occurs. Okay. So that could be a pet hotel. It could be a doggy daycare that also has that boarding facility. Some vets also board. So it could be a couple different experiences. It could also be a pet sitter taking your dog into their home. But again, I view that as very similar to a boarding facility because that's a completely new experience, a completely new environment. Okay, let's see. My dog barks anytime we go into the car. He barks the whole way. So car visits are limited to the vet and groomer. Yeah, car visits, this is huge. So first off, I'd be thinking, this is Darian, I believe. So Darian, I'd be looking at what can your dog see in the car? Where is your dog? Is your dog on the seat next to you? Is it in a carrier? It should really be in a carrier for safety. And if your dog's like Margo, who does bark to the point where it's like you're gonna drive off the road, the bark is so intense. We have a carrier for her, so she can't see out. She is in the back seat, like not in the seat, but where you put your feet basically in the car. That's where she is. She can't see anything. Of course, she can hear us, but she can't see people out the window. So if you're not already doing that, that's something to think about. This is again where meds could come in. You could have pheromones in the car. You could have sprayed yourself. You could have classical music on. You could be trying some of these things. Also, you could be trying just very quick visits. So don't actually go to the vet. Just get your dog in a car, put them in this carrier, thinking about everything, and go for 5 minutes. Again, when your dog's quiet, you want a good girl. Treat that, give that dog treats while they're being quiet or calm, and keep building on that. You want your dog to not associate car rides with maybe bad things, like in their mind, a vet or a groomer. You want them to associate the car ride with treats or the carrier with treats. So you want to try to take control of the aspects of that you can, but that's extremely, extremely common. Let's see, I adopted a Chihuahua Beagle mix who is sensitive to loud noises, very common, and fearful of me at times, hides in the crate, under the chair, won't come to me for a treat, consistently prefers my daughter. Interesting. Okay, so I'd really want, Bunny, I'd really want to see what's your daughter doing. That's incredibly interesting. If the dog is more aligned with your daughter, what is it? Is she ignoring the dog? Is she not, is she not approaching the dog, and so the dog's more comfortable approaching her? Is it a different tone? What is it? So I'd really be looking at that. But loud noises, that's a huge trigger for every dog, really. That is tough. You can start working on, again, treating the dog and using certain commands for them, leave it, perhaps, things like that. That takes some time, getting them, again, desensitized to, hey, loud sounds don't equal anything changing in your world. I'm still here, your daughter's still there, giving that calming presence. If they're hiding in their crate, under the chair, won't come out for treats, I mean, within reason, you want to give that dog a ton of space. So obviously the dog can't be hiding from you the entire day, but I guess my follow-up questions there would really be, why do we need to go after the dog? Can we let the dog stay there for a period of time while they're clearly having fear, anxiety, and stress? So if that happens with Windy City Paws, again, that's very common. We see these dogs scared in their crates. Typically, we do some things like, if we're wearing anything that could be upsetting to the dog. So in winter, like all of our winter gear, backpacks, big puffy coats, all that, we take all that off. We really sit down with a little bit of a distance between us and the crate. We're talking in a calm, soothing voice. We're doing what we call a treat trail. We're using high value treats, and we're putting them from where the dog is to us. Now, high value treats are maybe things you haven't thought of. Dogs love rotisserie chicken or deli meat or cheese or Cheerios, things like that. You have to look and make sure that you're giving your dog something that is appropriate for dogs and it's not going to be harmful. You have to make sure and be mindful that it won't ultimately upset their tummy. But sometimes using those high value things, now you are getting that dog's attention. And again, you want the dog to realize when they come and get the treat, that's a good thing. You're rewarding them. You're not quickly grabbing them. Oh, thanks. You came out, so I'm going to grab you. You want to, again, be calm and let them feel as in control as possible. You want to let them act naturally and not interrupt or impede that, because that could be concerning or scary to them. Let's see. Someone got on late and said, I have a 1-year-old dog and they're protective of me when I'm around other people and other dogs. Yeah, very common. Otherwise, she's great with dogs and people. So there's this protective issue, which we see a lot. How do I work with her? I've been to 3 trainers and they all say shot, collar, or drugging her. Yikes. Okay. That is scary. Highly recommend Anything is Possible in Chicago. Go on Yelp and look at trainers. They're great. They're who we're using with Margot. Highly recommend them because they're only about positive training. This, I would look at medication before I would ever look at a shot collar. We never want to have a negative association with something we're doing. And inherently, of course, a shot collar would be. So without knowing a ton more, Wendy, I would say, let's be open to medication. I wonder what your vet would say. And it sounds like if she's being protective of you, we need to find ways to slowly break down those interactions of you being with the dog and someone else, and start, again, giving her treats and that positive reward whenever we can, small increments. Remove her from your presence a little bit. If you are working from home and she's constantly by your side, maybe you're going to need to institute a different routine where she's not by your side for, let's say, 2 hours a day. Start with 20 minutes, but work up. You have to get your dog used to the fact that other people can care for her. She can trust other people, and it's not just you. But yeah, that's a big red flag. If you've been to multiple trainers and they're saying shot collar, please, please, please run in the other direction. I also know right now it can be frustrating. Trainers are really booked up with these types of animals right now, especially in Chicago. So I know it can be frustrating, but maybe talking to your vet first and starting with breaking down these activities again to smaller bite-sized chunks can help. I do see a couple more questions have come in that are a little nuanced, and we're at time. So what I'm going to do is I'll talk to Carly and Chalet and make sure I can get back to you guys. You guys could always reach out to me. My email address is info@windycitypaws.com. And if you guys have more targeted questions or Windy City Paws can help with anything, we would certainly love to. I really appreciate you guys giving me your time today. Thanks for dealing with my nerves. Hopefully this was informative and maybe just the tip of the iceberg of, how you can bond with your pet over time. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.